Now introducing the Minor Wisdom Trio! Minor Wisdom!
A lot to get to this week, but before I do that, I want to say thank you to Margaret Davis for being my guest this week. Last week I didn't say anything about Brad Neese until 10 minutes into a rant, and this time I'm going to say thank you, Margaret, for being on, and lots of there it is. We've figured out that we have lots of similarities, Margaret and I do. She's retired now, doing the UIL adjudicator thing, and living her best life. Was Jim Parsons' teacher. And full disclosure, I'm going to find some spot to put that into in the conversation, but I don't have a research team and didn't really know that was one of her students, that he was one of her students. And so we ended up talking about it at the end, but I might put it somewhere in the middle of the conversation. So if you hear some weird editing, my apologies. Again, I don't have a research team. And, it is what it is. But we did have a conversation about him a little bit. But that's pretty cool. I worked with Jim Parsons at Mildred's Umbrella 20 years ago, probably a little more than 20 years ago now. And it was more than 20. I wasn't 21 yet. So, he wasn't Jim Parsons yet. He was Jim Parsons, but he wasn't the Jim Parsons. So it was just some other actor. I've worked with lots of people that have done great things in their career. I want to talk about quite a few things. I took some notes. Number one, there are a lot of camps and opportunities on the horizon for our students, for our teachers, and for all these different opportunities. You have to start figuring stuff out relatively soon because it's almost the middle of April. But for all aspiring technical theater educators, if you have a passion for tech and you're looking to explore the world of sound, costuming, scenic painting, this opportunity I'm about to talk about is the perfect opportunity. It's the summer MAB. And I've talked about this before. The Summer MAB program is hosting their tech theater workshops, offering you guys a hands-on experience in these sort of key areas, right, of theater production. And they're very important areas that there are a lot of people that talk about, I don't have experience in this stuff. So their workshops are all taught by professionals with years and years of experience in those fields, and they understand what it's like to be a theater educator. So you're all required to wear so many hats, right? Producers and all this kind of stuff. We have to be a producer and a director and a company manager, and especially if you don't have a dedicated technical director. So the guest artists are going to kind of help guide you through the process and provide you the skills in order to be successful and up those production values. You know what I mean? So this summer, one of your options is this MAB technical theater program. They've expanded to have multiple locations. So it's available in an effort. These locations are available in an effort to serve more and more theater educators. So if you're interested, and I'll put the link in the description, you want to go to MAB, M-A-B, Minor Alpha Blake, or Minor Adam Blake, because that's my name backwards, but mabtechnicaltheater.com, and that's theater with an R-E, the art of theater. Visit mabtechnicaltheater.com. You can get dates and sign up and all that kind of stuff. So you don't want to really miss out on this incredible opportunity. You're going to learn from the best and explore your passion for all things tech. So you're going to sign up there. And again, I'll put it in the bio of this episode. I recorded early last week I recorded the intro early last week because I went to Maryland for a wedding. And long story short, not to bore you with the deets, but it was supposed to be a family of 4 there. Ended up being a family of 3 because my wife got COVID. And she spent the week prior to that in Montreal, Quebec, Canada, which I think I mentioned that last week. And then she got to Maryland, said, I don't feel well, tested positive, got on a plane, went home. And so I'm a very cerebral person. I don't really like surprises. Now, I'm good at adjusting after a little bit of anger. I'm really flexible, actually. If you ever ask Charlie Oglesby, easier for me to say Charlie. Not that she's listening, but Charlie always said you're very flexible with working with you. So, but when you're a single parent with 2 beautiful girls, and you were expecting to be 2 parents, husband and wife with 2 beautiful girls in a strange foreign land like Maryland, USA, your mindset changes. So it was very stressful, but it was also WrestleMania weekend, and so I was able to use that as my kind of moment, even though I was watching some of it as well as San Diego State while we were at the wedding. WrestleMania happened and lots of wrestling stuff. Jay and I did not do a wrestling podcast this year. We just didn't have time. Part of it was my fault because I went to Maryland. Enough of that. So congrats to the region advancers, or congrats to the people that went on. Friends of mine, Bobby Ramirez, congrats. Destiny Miller, so shocked. So shocked she made it. I don't know if she had announced that she's going to Yale prior to last week's intro, but anyway, congrats to her. And it's just cool, lots of changes happening around the world of theater education. Once again, I know of some people applying for jobs secretly, and I've had some people reach out to me asking me if I know some people. I also know some people have announced already that they're moving on. So congrats to those people. I hope it works out for you. I may have some news next week. Maybe not. Not going to say anything yet. Got to wait for those I's to get crossed and those T's to get dotted. So, I may have something for you. The other thing is, or there are 2 other little notes that I wanted to address. One is the Alley Theater. The Alley Theater canceled their Odyssey. And it was interesting. I don't know all the tea, but I do know that there were some allegations made that lent themselves towards some race issues that I'm not going to touch with a 10-foot pole. But I know the Alley has been doing a lot of saving face recently with the past regime having very public negative effects on people's lives and such. And this current regime has done a fantastic job. And this is kind of the first blemish. And so I'm not going to pass any judgment on. I don't want to state anything that I don't know facts about. But the Alley Theater right now is going through some stuff. And I do know, I can speak on this, that Laura Target, who I work with, who's a brilliant costumer at the John Cooper School, went to go see it, went to go see a preview performance of it, and came back, and usually doesn't do this, came straight into my office and just started telling me about how great the performance was and how amazing it was. Didn't mention anything about race. I did not know that these were the cast is predominantly black, nor do I really care, because I thought the Alley was making strides to not really make that a point, just cast the best actor. But the lead was on book, and she did tell me that, and that you couldn't really tell that the lead was on book in the first act, but in the second act you definitely could. The first act was 2 hours. The second act was about 30 minutes. But she said you got lost in it, and it was really, really good. So I don't know exactly what happened. Again, nor do I care. But it sucks. The thing I do care about is is Tennessee. That state is proving to be quite a problem when it comes to this gun control thing. And I don't know if you saw, but there were two representatives, state representatives, that were exiled or whatever from their capital. And the fun thing is, I guess the fun part of this is that those seats have to be filled. Again, I'm just telling you this based on what I saw on the news and what I read about and all this kind of stuff. But those seats have to be filled, and they can be filled back with the two people that were sort of excommunicated from the House, which is interesting. Seems like a weird way to do things. But they can also then be reinstated through vote. Like their constituents can vote them back in, which I think is crazy. But these two black men were, and a white woman were up for being exiled. I don't know if I'm using that term correctly, but they were up for being taken out of the Capitol, the Tennessee House, and the white woman, the votes passed that she could stay. The two black men, the votes passed that they had to go. And some of the arguments that these people had against these two black men, all these old white men standing up and to the old white man defense, there were quite a few old white men who stood up and defended these guys that were for them staying, not against them leaving, or not against them staying, excuse me. And they just had such horrific, naive, ignorant things to say to these two men. And then these two men, one specifically, said so many beautiful things into this not well EQ'd microphone. And it was, I mean, I don't want to necessarily compare it to how some people sort of that feel the way I felt when they saw MLK, but it had that same power to it. It had that same, like, I wanted to bust through a wall after hearing these gentlemen talk. And again, it's crazy where we're at in this country, and I don't want to become a political podcast because that's not what this is. But I do have to say, the thing is this affects us. This affects school teachers. This affects our students. So it is part of what the niche element of this podcast is, which is theater educators, specifically most of the time Texas theater educators. And a lot of this stuff happens in Texas, and a lot of this stuff happens to our friends and our colleagues. And I know multiple people that have had lockdowns because of actual guns being in actual schools or actual guns killing actual students and teachers. And so this is a part of this podcast. And I apologize to those people that aren't necessarily listening for this kind of thing, but this is part of that niche-ness. It's not a word, but it just is. And so I'm going to spend 2 weeks talking about it, and hopefully that's it. Hopefully some stuff changes. Hopefully nothing else happens that's negative, and hopefully there's some positive change. And until then, I'm going to keep talking about it and use this as my outlet. And so that's what it is. So be it. Once again, I want to thank Margaret Davis for coming on the podcast. If you haven't yet purchased, not you, Margaret, although you too, but if you haven't yet purchased a shirt, please, it helps support the podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, nice long intro, nice long interview. Enjoy Margaret Davis.
I was born in Wichita Falls, and I was the fourth of four siblings, and my brothers and sisters are older than I am. And so I was always tasked with entertaining myself because, back in the 60s, nobody had play dates and cared what their children did. They just said, go figure something out. And so even when I was little, I used to write plays and I used to solicit kids in the neighborhood to perform them. We'd go into my backyard where we had a clothesline because we didn't have a dryer. We had a washing machine, clothes washing machine, but we didn't have a dryer. So my mother would hang these big sheets on the clothesline, and that was my stage, and I would direct and I would star, and it was just that sort of situation. And so they knew pretty early on that I was going to have some sort of life in the arts. So we moved away from Wichita Falls and we went to the Houston area when I was about 10. And I was in the Cy-Fair School District, went to elementary school there. And then I went to Arnold Middle School and I met a teacher who changed my life. Because I don't know how it is with guys, but with girls, middle school is just the worst time of your entire life. Oh my gosh. You feel like you're ugly, you feel like you're stupid, you feel like you don't fit in. But my 6th grade teacher, and I wasn't even signed up for theater. Somehow or another, the drama teacher picked me out of the 6th grade to be in the 7th grade play. And her name was Phyllis Hamilton. And she's the reason that my life went on the trajectory that it did. She gave me something that made me feel like I had self-esteem, that I was good at. And so anything like that when you're in middle school, you just latch on. And so then they opened a new middle school. They opened Belial, and we were the first group to go through there. And she was the theater teacher there. So, I was definitely a theater kid by 7th grade. And I knew in 7th grade that I wanted to be a theater teacher because I wanted to grow up and be just like Mrs. Hamilton. So I went on to Cy-Fair High School. I was involved in theater, did lots of shows, that sort of thing. Went on to the University of Texas, where I got my bachelor's degree. And I was there at a really wonderful time. It was before UT had a graduate program or tried to think of itself as, full of itself. And we were allowed to work crew all the time. Well, actually, we had to. We had to be in shows. We had to work crew. We had to do everything as undergraduates. And I was there at a really good time with people like Rick Garcia was there, Billy Dragoo, David Stevens, Travis Poe, Rod Caspers. I mean, it was a magical time to be an undergraduate. So did lots and lots of shows there, but I was always the theater major. I mean, they knew from the beginning I was I was going to be the drama ed major. Just had a wonderful time. Got a lot of experience doing a lot of things. I think I learned more about the different crafts that are available in theater when I was at UT. I was actually a shop assistant, a scene shop assistant, because I was on work study because I didn't have a whole lot of money. So, going to class, working in the scene shop, going to rehearsal, that was pretty much, my life for however many years, I guess 5 years. I took a little extra to graduate. Got through that. One of the good things about going to the University of Texas as it relates to one-act play is that we hosted one-act play. And so for 4 years, I was backstage or contest managing with Mr. Murray or something, doing something with one-act play. And I got to see some of the most amazing shows. People like Jerry Worsham, Larry Wisdom, Charlotte Brown. Who else? I mean, people that are just there. Louise. I saw some of Louise's shows. Rachel Maddox, Lou Lindsay. I mean, just really people that we look up to now and think those people were amazing. And so I got to see their work before I ever got out of college. So I felt like I kind of had a leg up perhaps on other people because I knew how this contest ran. I knew, basically what it was all about. I wasn't one of those first year teachers that was the deer in the headlights. Oh my God, what do I do? What play do I pick? No, I felt pretty confident. So I graduated from there in 84, and I started teaching right out of that at Bel Air High School. And Bel Air had just come off of some teachers after I hate not being able to come up. Who was like, who was there for so long?
Before you?
Yeah. I mean, he and Mrs. Denny, Cecil Pickett.
Cecil.
Cecil Pickett. Cecil Pickett. I was coming in just after Cecil Pickett left, and there had been some people there that had not necessarily prospered. And I came in, and let me just tell you that the kids were unbelievable. Now, you've been a teacher, so you know this. Every few years, you just get a magical group of people together. And those kids in those first years of my teaching were unbelievable. The most dedicated kids. They would stay up all night painting scenery if they needed to. I mean, they would do anything for theater. And we did some fabulous work. And in a way, I guess I was growing up with them because, you're only 4 years older than that first graduated class. And so I was learning how to be a teacher. But they were amazing. I still keep in touch with most of them, as a matter of fact. The I was there for 3 years, and then I got this wild hair. I said, I want to go back to graduate school and get my MFA in directing. And I had heard that I needed to go to California. So, silly me, I quit my job, decided to drive out to California and find, I'll live there for a year, I'll establish residency, and I'll get accepted at a university. Well, of course, that didn't happen. I drove out to California, went all the way up the coast, couldn't find a job, especially couldn't find a place to live because you can't afford to live there, and ended up coming back and saying, well, what am I going to do now? Because they'd already hired somebody to take my position at Bel Air. I ended up at Johnston Middle School, and I taught middle school for exactly 1 year. That is a tough, tough job. It's so much harder than teaching high school because the sixth graders cry and the eighth graders think that they're seniors in high school, and hormones are just crazy. But I tried to be for them what Phyllis Hamilton was to me. And so it ended up being an okay situation. And I had some great kids that went on to HSPVA, and they're very successful. Some of them are, out in Hollywood right now working. Then I heard that there was going to be an opening out in the Klein School District. A friend of mine I was in a show with, Lisa Matranga. We were doing a play that Jerry Baber directed. We were doing Godspell, and she said, "Well, there's going to be an opening." She goes, "I'm leaving after next year," and so I was like, "Oh, that sounds fabulous. I'll go out to Klein. I mean, Rick's out there. I'll go work with Rick. He's my friend." So I ended up actually going to Klein High School first and working with Mike Harrison, which was a interesting year of my life. And then the next year I went over to Klein Oak and worked with Rick for a year. We've been friends forever and ever and ever. So that was just an easy fit. And then he moved on and I stayed. I was the head of that theater department for, 17, 18 years, something like that. We were successful. It was a great place to work. The kids were they were dedicated. They were just good middle class kids that do what they're supposed to do. You didn't have a huge sense of entitlement yet. That was all coming, but it wasn't there yet. So I had some really outstanding students, and I look forward to talking to them all the time. Then I guess it was '99, I had gotten married, and my husband did not like the hours that I was spending as a theater teacher. And so I got my master's in education, in educational leadership from Sam Houston. And I ended up being an assistant principal in the same building, which is good and it's bad. Because when you're in the same building, all those kids that you have trained for all these years, the ones that were still there, used to come to my office all the time and say, "Oh, he's doing it wrong." And I was like, "No, he's not doing it wrong. He's just doing it differently." And so, but that was good. And so I was an assistant principal there, and I moved up and became an associate principal and became basically the associate principal for curriculum instruction. I hired teachers. I did, staff development, and it was a really, really nice job if you don't put into it the things that you have to do with discipline and that sort of thing. But getting to work with teachers was just another phase of getting to work with kids. They're just bigger. Had a nice time. And then my husband got transferred out to Arizona. So we moved out to Scottsdale, Arizona, and I went back to the classroom. I was such a better teacher that 1 year in Arizona than I would ever have been before because I had gotten a more global view of what education was. Getting to be a principal and an associate principal those years, it made me a better classroom teacher. So we always say we wish principals would come back to the classroom. Well, I wish that teachers could also spend some time. I wish it was like a cross curricular kind of thing where people could see each other's roles a little clearer. And then my husband and I divorced, and I came back to Houston. I got a job at Kingwood High School because Frank Shooter called me and he goes, "I hear you're back in town. We've got an opening. You've got to come work at Kingwood High School." And Kingwood was fabulous, absolutely fabulous. And that's where I ended my career. I remarried, and my husband was transferred to Minneapolis. And so I retired in, I guess it was 2012, and I was 52. And so I just barely, hit that rule of 80 so that I could retire. And we went to Minnesota, having never been there. Neither one of us had ever been to Minnesota, which is a fabulous place. Minnesota people are genuinely nice people. They don't have an ulterior motive. They don't want anything from you. They're just nice people, good Midwestern people. And so we were there for 3 years, and then the company redomesticated to Tampa, Florida, which is where I live now. So I had been retired for a while now. And so we moved to Florida, and my brother said to me, he goes, "You know what you need to do?" He goes, "You've always been building scenery and making props." And he goes, "I know you build furniture for your house and that sort of thing." He goes, "You want to get your contractor's license." He goes, "You get your contractor's license and I'll be your angel. I will we'll buy properties and we'll flip them. Because I'll be the money and you be the hands, and whatever profit we make, we'll split it." And so I said, "Oh, look, that sounds like a fabulous idea." And so I got my license, which is really, really hard in Florida. That is the most regulated state in the United States because of all the hurricanes. Got my license, and my brother got prostate cancer and passed away. So I ended up with a contractor's license and no money. I said, "That's okay. I truly believe that everything happens for a reason." And then I had a friend say to me, she said, "Wait, aren't you a contractor?" And I went, "Well, yeah, I've got a license." He goes, "Will you come look at my bathroom?" And I went, "No, no, 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 no. I don't have any subcontractors. I don't really know." Well, she ended up talking me into it, and I did one of her bathrooms. And then somebody saw her bathroom and they said, "Oh, I saw Carol's bathroom. Can you come and look at my kitchen?" Well, that snowball took off, and now I have a company in Florida, and I am a full-time contractor. I have so much work, I don't know what to do. I never advertise, it's only word of mouth. But when I'm not doing this, I'm, completely redoing people's houses. So, but everybody in Florida knows every March I leave. They're like, "Now, where are you going?" "I'm going to go judge one act play." Well, if you're not from Texas, you don't have a clue what that means. And so I have to explain to them, well, every school has a football team and they compete, and the winner in the district goes on until you get to the state champion. I said to Texas, we have the same thing. And they're like, "Why do you go? Why do you drive 1,000 miles to go judge plays?" And for me, this is the thing that fills my soul. This is the thing that makes me feel human. Talking with kids and working with kids and doing critiques, it's the reason why I was put on this planet. And so it's like this is my time to recharge and remember who I am and why I'm here. And then I go back home and become a contractor again.
That's
And
fun.
that's my story.
Wow. That's if that's not a story about transferable skills, I don't know what it is.
Ex-
Yeah.
exactly. And it is completely transfer. You absolutely everything's the same.
What type of adjustments did you have to make as a builder, carpenter, your mindset? Because, in theater, we build to last for a couple weeks.
Mhm.
But when you're a contractor, you're building hopefully for the lifetime of that house. That's the expectation. What did you have to, your mindset when it came to design and structure and all that kind of stuff? It's probably a whole podcast on its own,
It
but,
is.
but
It
yeah,
is.
but just in a nutshell, what did you have to
Well,
grab?
the good thing is I had remodeled every house I'd ever lived in,
Okay.
and I knew about building codes, and I knew, how you have to build walls, and I just knew. And then when I got my license, I learned every
Right.
every code you could possibly need, and so it really wasn't difficult because I wasn't coming directly from the theater and going to that, and so it kind of morphed on its own. So yeah, I'm the carpenter part
Right.
of my business. I do all my own woodworking. I have a wonderful electrician, I have a wonderful plumber. I mean, I have tile guys, you name it, I've
Right.
got them. But I am my own carpenter. And it really goes back to when I was a scene shop assistant at the University of Texas when I learned how to use a radial arm saw and a table saw and a bandsaw And you know what else doesn't hurt? That I have been addicted to home improvement shows since the early 80s when
Bob Vila. Oh, okay.
Norm Abram and This Old House. And I would like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, that's a biscuit. He's doing a biscuit joint there. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, okay, what's he doing? Okay, that's a half lap. Okay, oh, I see that. And so I actually learned a lot that way also.
That's funny. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm a girl dad, so like I'm a big proponent on like my girls are going to be able to do anything that they want, no matter if it's something that boys are typically doing or girls are typically doing, right? And so,
Yeah, you ask any female that ever worked for me. No one ever got to play the girl card.
right, exactly.
Girls rock.
Yeah.
Girls can do anything they choose to do.
Yeah, but it's just that's really kind of awesome because it's similar. My path may end up being similar to yours. What it sounds like is because my sister's always like, "Can't you build this? Can't you do this? Can't you?"
Mhm.
So, but she also has never. She'll tell you that her peak was in eighth grade in their production of Grease at Holland Middle School, in A-Leaf. But so she's not much of a stage person herself, but she doesn't necessarily understand that my window seat is not going to look like the window seat of a contractor. But anyway,
But I actually find myself sometimes overbuilding.
yeah, right.
Overbuilding because you're like you want it to make sure that it's solid, it's going to last forever. And my guys that work with me, they go, don't have to do all of
Yeah.
that. It's like no, but I want to do all of that.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's. I wrote down a lot of things. You mentioned
Good.
before I started recording that we must have met somewhere. Now, none of these places we might have met. However, there is so much. Like I'm currently, my home is zoned to Klein Oak,
Mhm.
and so I've actually done some lighting at Klein Oak for a few shows, just because I'm
Mhm.
right down the street and building
Exactly.
that relationship. So we didn't meet because
Are
of
you
that.
like in Northampton or right there?
I am just south of Creekside, so I'm on
Oh,
off of Kirkendall. Yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So now people know they can come egg my house, but if they can find me. But so the other thing is So my mother, before you were at Bel Air, my mother graduated from Bel Air in '68,
Okay.
and then my sister, and I just texted her to find out who was the teacher there when she was there. It wasn't you, but she graduated from Bel Air in '96. So
Oh,
it might have been Paul Munson at that time, but I don't.
it was.
Yeah.
It was.
But then also Gail Silver was my middle school teacher at Welch, and Gail came over to Bel Air to work with Paul. Um, uh, and then also Johnston, I went to Welch Middle School, which was like the big rival of
Right.
Johnston, and now I forget what they're called, but they're like something PVA. They're the
Yeah.
HSPVA feeder.
It's the feeder for
Yeah.
HSPVA, Justin
Um,
Performing Arts Academy.
there you go. So it's just funny how you mentioned all these names of places, and I was like, yeah. It's probably we don't know each other because of those things, but the parallel is rather similar.
I swear there are only 200 people in this world.
Yeah.
We just keep bouncing into each other.
So let's go back a little bit to that
Okay.
middle school feeling. And again, I'm
Uh, yeah.
selfishly talking to you about this because my daughter's about to enter sixth grade next year.
Oh,
And my wife, who is also, well, she's this past year she stopped teaching. She was in the classroom for almost 15 years, and most of that was spent middle school theater teaching.
mhm,
And we're both scared out of our minds
mhm,
for our soon to be sixth grader to enter middle school. Can
mhm.
you tell me that everything's going to be okay.
Everything's good. Everything's going to be fine because you're aware of it.
Okay.
And
All right.
anything that you can do to build her self-esteem,
Yeah.
anything you can do to make her, because statistics show that females start declining in like math scores and science scores in
Right.
middle school because they don't want to be smart in front of the boys.
Okay.
That's when you start calling on boys more than you calling on girls. It's just such a tough time. But your wife knows this
Yeah.
because she was a middle school teacher,
Yeah.
which there's a special place in heaven for middle school teachers. I'm telling
Yeah.
you,
Yeah. No, you're exactly right.
she's gonna be fine.
She went from high school teaching with Brad Cummins at Austin High School in Fort Bend,
Mhm.
and who's a legend, to teaching at middle school. And I never taught middle school, and I would never understand, you know, what do you mean you can't get this show up? Can't you just give these kids, give them a worksheet and let them? And she's like, no, that's not how
No, no.
worksheets turn into paper planes, and all that kind
Mhm.
of stuff. So, your UT influence. So I've got a few
Yeah.
things to focus on here. First of all, Ruth Denny. Where
Oh,
is it?
she was like my mom,
Okay.
just absolutely like my mom. My mother passed away while I was in college,
Yep.
and Mrs. Denny became my surrogate mother.
Yeah.
I mean, staying at her house and everything, in her office all the time, and she didn't put up with anything.
Yeah.
She was one of the most empowering women you will ever meet in your entire life because she wouldn't put up with anything. I showed up once at one of my student teaching things and I wasn't dressed to the nines, and I heard about it the next day. So she expected so much from us, and we gave her exactly what she wanted. We worshiped her. She was bigger than life,
Yeah.
absolutely bigger than life. And by the time I was a senior, I was actually this sounds horrible, but I was actually doing her undergraduate advising for her.
I mean, yeah. But that's training. That's
Yeah,
education.
she was in her 70s, probably her late 70s by then.
Yeah.
And so she was I would do anything for that woman. I
Yeah.
would have done anything.
Well, there's.
I actually got to speak at her funeral.
Oh, really?
They did a wonderful memorial in B. Iden Payne Theater at the University of Texas campus, and I got to speak, and it was very special. Very,
Yeah.
very special.
We, at PVA, the theater was known as the Ruth Denny Theater, and that's a
Sure.
lot of influence from Bob Singleton. But so we
Oh,
learned,
Bob.
yeah, we learned a lot about Ruth Denny when I was in high school, and then after separating myself from PVA as far as a graduate, I've never really left there. My soul hasn't, but I didn't get reintroduced to Ruth Denny until I started this podcast because there were so many, and you've mentioned all their names of people that were influenced by her, and
Oh my God. Oh my God,
yeah.
of course.
So
And she was a force, and I think sometimes that's the reason why I can sometimes be a force,
right,
because that's where I learned it. You don't put up with anything in class and rehearsal at all. You get up, you do your job, you're professional, and you make everything right.
so you mentioned like you all these names, and it's been said multiple times on this podcast about who all was at UT at the same time. Kind of
Yeah.
this massive core of very influential kind of Texas theater legends, right?
Yeah.
Why? What was happening at the time that made that happen?
Well, I think part of it was that it was before they specialized, and I guess part of it was just kismet and luck that we all happened to be about the same age. But the work that we were producing was really excellent work too. Um, I can't tell you exactly why everybody was there. I imagine some of it's got to be because of Mr. Murray and UIL, but I don't
Yeah,
know. It was a magical time to be there.
yeah, it's kind
Some
of
of
crazy,
my dearest friends that are still, I'm still close to. We were friends in college,
right?
so.
Yeah, you just mentioned something else we have in common. My mother passed away when I was in college as well. Both of my parents did, and so I have
Oh, I'm so
oh,
sorry.
it was 17 years ago, but I mean,
Yeah,
thank you, but my sister and I deal with it in a very comedic and sort of dark humor kind of way.
yeah.
That's our way of coping. But you spoke on Ruth Denny being kind of this stepping into
Mhm.
this matriarchal role for you,
She did.
and I had the same with Kevin Rigdon at UH,
Mhm.
who sort of, because both times, and jokingly or not, at both times I was designing my only main stage shows as an undergrad designer at UH, both tech weeks. That's when my parents passed away. So it was like,
Play.
well, but I jokingly, now I teach at UH, so I tell these kids, I was like, hey, be careful what shows you design, in a very dark humor kind of way. But Kevin was able to step in, and
Yeah.
because he watched all this happen, and be that person for me. So I totally understand that feeling of like, just go to their office just to sit and
Just to sit,
yeah,
to sit and have somebody just be there. They
Yeah.
don't have to do anything for you. They don't have to hold you. They just have to be there,
Yep.
and they see you.
Yep.
Yeah, I lost my dad before I was 30, so we
Yeah.
have we have that in common.
Yeah.
I was a later in life child. They had me in their 40s, so
Okay. Yeah. Both. I'm trying to. Both my parents were in their 50s, so when they passed away. But yeah, it was. It's one of those things. I don't think I would be who I am or where I am today if that hadn't happened. And not to say that I would wish that on anybody, but it's like, me being with the woman that I'm with as my wife, and us having our kids that we have. Like all these dominoes fell into place. And I'm not a religious person, but every once in a while you go back and you think, somebody's doing something to control the situation.
Right.
Because it's worked out. I could not ask for. My daughters are the absolute best. So, and I wouldn't have had them if that none of that happened. So
I agree with you, and I always say, everything happens for a reason,
Yeah.
and things are placed in your path when they're supposed to be, and part of it is that you see them when you're supposed to see them.
yeah,
And so, yeah,
yeah,
that's one of the toughest things, and nobody can understand it unless they've experienced it.
right.
And I see people now, living in Florida, everybody's old. My sweet husband calls Florida God's waiting room. Um, but I actually have friends that, they're in their 70s,
Yeah.
and they'll complain that their mother, who's in the 90s, and I have to go take my mother to get her nails done. I'm like, I would give anything in
Yeah.
the world,
Yeah.
anything in the world for one more day with my mother.
Yeah.
So you just shut up
Yeah.
right now, and you be happy that your mother's still alive.
Right. So the tech tip I have for this week, just a tech tip. It actually comes from this week's personal experience. For the second time this school year, I have needed stitches. So my tech tip is cut away from you. The first time was a freak accident. This time was all stupid me. We're using something called pulp art, which is pretty much sprayed on kind of molded cardboard onto a mold, right? And this is for a brick, an old timey brick look, which if you follow me on Facebook, I'll have some pictures once we're done, probably tomorrow as I record this, but once we're done with that pulp art. But anyway, I was cutting it to kind of fit around some 2x4 framing, and cut it towards my thumb and cut right into my thumb. So my tech tip of the week is to cut away from you. Cut away from anything that you don't want to bleed all over the pulp art. That's just the tip. You just reminded me that you taught Jim Parsons, and funny, I did a show with Jim Parsons at Mildred's Umbrella before he was Jim Parsons. But
What year would that have been?
2002 or 3 maybe.
Okay.
So, but yeah. So, do you still keep in touch with Jim Parsons? I mean, are you?
Absolutely. He's just one of my kids.
Yeah, and what type of person has he become, or is he still the same kid that you taught?
He's exactly the same. Absolutely has not changed at all. When he was on Broadway recently, I was backstage with him, and I had a friend, one of my college roommates was with me, and Jim and I are standing. Okay, so I was in New York to see him because I go see everything that he does.
Yeah.
So I was in New York when he was doing Boys in the Band, and I had taken along with me one of my roommates from college, and I'm standing off to the side, and Jim and I are just chatting and talking and everything. And then Linnell says to me afterwards, she goes, "What were you talking about? You were so focused, whatever it was." And I said, Well, I was giving him notes. And she said, you were what? I said, I was giving him notes. I mean, what do you expect? I was his high school theater teacher. Of course I'm going to give him notes. He's the sweetest thing in the whole world. He's nothing like his character. He is he's very soft, and he's very articulate, and he's very kind. And what a lot of people don't know is when he was in high school, when I first met him, he wanted to be a meteorologist. And
That's
then we
funny.
did his junior year, we did Noises Off. And he likes to credit that show as the show that made him decide he wanted to be an actor.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
he was very, very sweet.
What did you know that he was going to be something?
No,
Okay.
because he was one of those, like we talked about earlier. Sometimes you have a group that's just magical. He was in a magical group, and he was good. He was funny, and I loved him. And he was in every show. But there were other actors that same year that were just as good. They just did. He fills a very specific niche in
Yeah.
television movies. They were all fabulous, fantastic. And you know who was really good is his little sister.
Yeah.
His little sister, who was a second grade teacher, first grade teacher, something like that. She was outstanding. So did I know he was going to make it big? No. Am I glad he made it big? Absolutely.
Did the other sort of parallel you and I, or similarity you and I have, is you taught for 3 years and then left and then came back to teaching. But because I did that same thing, I taught exactly 3 years, left to go do real world stuff, and then I was like, well, I should come back to teaching. So that's what I did. But just wanted to throw that out there. So I got to ask about the AP thing. So I have a master's in administration or education with a certification in administration. And one of the things that I noticed, and I've talked about this on this podcast before, of the reasons why I didn't go into administration, but one of those things that I don't think I've ever talked about is exactly what you said when it comes to being an AP in a place where you've taught, and those students now, rightfully or wrongfully, kind of look at you or deem you the easy AP, or the one that's going to let them off, right? And so I had so many students while I was at Dulles say, "Hey, if you become an assistant principal here, and I get in trouble, are you going to be cool?" And and so I didn't end up doing that, right? Being an AP, that is. But I mean, what is that like? I mean, where do you have to kind of like draw the line, or
Well, first of all, I was not the easy AP.
Okay.
I got the most troubled kids too.
Yeah.
And I guess the recurring theme that kept coming back is, dude, she's cool, but she'll give you whatever punishment you're supposed to have. I mean, she's fair, but she's cool. Because being a theater teacher, you do so much counseling and talking to kids and getting to know their psyche that by the time I was an assistant principal, I had a way. I knew I could communicate with kids, and so even these kids that nobody could stand, and they would throw them out of class all the time. I could get on the same ground with them. And so a lot of times they would not want to disappoint me. They didn't want to come to they'd come to the office so many times, we'd get to know each other, and then they wouldn't want to come back to the office because they wouldn't want to disappoint me. But I was fair. I was tough. It was pretty much, dude, if you're going to do the action, you got to do the consequence, right? And here I am saying dude all of a sudden.
It's all right.
And the kids know, you're going to skip class. This is going to be your consequence. Okay. Are you willing to take that consequence? Yes, ma'am. All right. Then I don't have a problem with it. I never judged any of them. I never made them feel less. I always felt like they were my kids. And what's so funny is you get so close to theater kids and they become your absolute children. Well, these troubled kids too, these kids that, come from really tough backgrounds, or even the really rich kids that are ignored by their parents or whatever it is, you love them too in the same sort of way. I still keep in touch with some of the kids that I used to regularly suspend, because, I don't know.
Yeah.
Being a theater teacher, I think, gives you so much insight to just the way kids work.
Right.
Because you get to see them so much more than their parents ever do. and you understand them. So I think it makes you actually a better administrator. The thing that used to get me is, you know, staff problems. That's really tough. Dealing with kids is a piece of cake when you're
Yeah.
at AP. Dealing with teachers, not so much.
Right.
Because all of a sudden now you have your peers that you've been working with for almost 20 years and you've got them in your office and you have to tell them that something that they did was less than desirable. And that's hard. That's hard. You got to learn a whole new language for that. They used to assign me the teachers that they wanted to get rid of because they knew that I would spend a lot of time in their classroom and I would give them every tool I had, fill their box with tools to make them successful teachers. But then if they didn't, then I was the one that
Right.
was the one that could say, this, Blake, you have worked so hard this year and I appreciate it so much, but I don't think it's going to work out, sweetheart.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes they're older than you are, but
Yeah. Ego becomes a thing a little bit the older you get, I guess. You protect it some.
as long as you're kind.
Yeah.
Travis Poe and I were talking about this just the other night on the phone. But when you give critiques, you can give. Because Travis says, I want to give these really tough critiques. I said, well, you can give tough critiques as long as you're kind, as long as you're coming from the right place, as long as your heart is in there. You can give them tough critiques. You don't have to give everybody light and fluffy, yeah, your show was great critiques. You can be tough as long as you're coming from a place of kindness in your heart.
Well, and switching gears on that, the critique thing, because that's kind of been a hotbed topic so far. And I've had 2 contests thus far, and I've got one more next week as we record this. It'll be over by the time this posts. But the whole when do we do critiques chat is been very it's gotten a lot of traction recently, especially on like the Facebook page and such. And what is your opinion on when you think the most effective critique resonates with these kids? It's definitely not after the awards.
We know that for a fact. Yeah. So anytime prior to the awards, they're receptive.
Right. Okay.
Anytime prior to the awards, doing it right after the show is good because it's fresh. Doing it after all the shows is good also. As long as they don't know that they have not advanced, right, they're going to be like little sponges and soak up everything that you've got. And I have never, ever in my history had a cast that was less than respectful or receptive. Even back when I was a single judge, right, and we would critique all the plays after the awards. Never once did I have somebody that was disrespectful. I did have a situation once where this group was just crying and they were so sad. And this one little girl who was the lead of the play, she was just bawling. Oh my God. And I didn't know how I was going to do the critique because they were just so demonstrative. And so I walked over to them and I said to her, I said, sweetie, I said, you wear your emotions on your shoulder, don't you? She, yes, ma'am. I said, that's what makes you a good actress. Turned it off immediately. And she started listening to me. And when she turned around, the entire group turned around.
Yeah.
And all I did was I saw her as a human being. And I responded to her. I didn't talk at her. I let her know that I was with her in the moment. And that I was going to talk to her about her play. But then I thought she was a good actress.
Yeah.
So made all the difference. I actually am one of those I'm one of those people who wishes we still had single judges only because I want to critique every play.
Yeah. I've heard
that argument. I really love panels, but I love giving critiques. I love it so much.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, or it could be an option. Maybe there are 2 adjudicators that are just like not feeling it that day and they can vote to allow you, but I don't think that'll happen. But yeah, as far as the critique, because I just experienced this for the first time, the critique right after the show. And so they were 10-minute critiques and we had a pretty good timekeeper in the room with them that was like, nope, time's up. And it was almost like they were able to pull a plug on a microphone type thing. And do you feel more pressure to get all of your kind of constructive criticism out to the students, or is it, have you trained yourself?
I'm horrible. When they tell me it's 10 minutes, I won't stop because I will say to the timer, I'm going to finish my notes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've had lots of them try to stop me. and I say, I'm going to finish my notes.
Good.
It's not
Okay.
fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair if they can't, if I only critique the first, 2/3 of their show. That's
Right.
that's not educational.
Right. Okay. Good. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have a follow up with that. I was just kidding.
But I had someone do it just the other day. She said, okay, you've got 10 minutes. And I looked at her and I said, well, you can try and stop me, but I'm going to finish my notes. And I went on for, I think I probably went on for like 15 or 16 minutes. Wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And after the show, she wrote me the sweetest thing. She said, this was the woman who was the stage manager at the contest. She goes, I could listen to you do critiques for hours and hours. The critique you gave that school was so good. I'm so glad I didn't stop you.
Yeah. There you go. I mean, yeah. And there, I think it's also sometimes up to the school itself, but that's my only, as a contest manager that is super time oriented. I mean, like I'm just like that in my daily life. Like if you and I said we're meeting at 3:00 and it's 3:01, I'll message you and be like, why are you late?
That's why I was on at 2:57.
Yeah, I know you were fine.
I feel the same way.
But like as a contest manager, I have to sometimes remove that because I was just a CM for a contest where the adjudicator showed up late for a good her tire blew out on her way. Like she was going to be plenty fine. Like, and everything ended up being fine, but at no fault of hers, her car gave out, right? And but it was a 45-minute late start, and it's like I'm like, oh my god, we got to figure out how to make up this time, and
and your OCD kicked in.
Yeah, and you start like the curtain speech is just like, hey guys, don't take pictures. Anyway, the next show, and, it's because you're just trying to make up all that time, but it ended up working out just fine. But it's that kind of thing that the critiques being in between shows where you've got at least 7 minutes, but then that kind of thing is like, oh man, if this adjudicator is going to go 30 minutes, it's going to push us back. But It sounds like when you say you're going to finish your notes, you're still in a reasonable amount of time. Yeah.
Because, that's the educational part of the contest.
Yeah, right.
Having your kids watch the other shows and learn just by watching, but also getting the feedback.
Right.
If we didn't give the feedback, what's the point of having the contest? We might as well be the basketball team.
Yeah. And also you don't want that feedback coming from your own director because they're going to pick and choose what they tell you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can never say enough when you're writing to those schools that are not going to get to hear you. You can never say everything that you want to say.
Right.
So even though I fill up every page, turn it up, fill that page up too.
So I could probably talk to you for another few hours, but you're getting close to the sweet spot of when I cut people off. But
okay. I can't believe it's been that long.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you when we're done. Okay. Anyway, but. So I want to kind of get you out of here on this, and you sort of alluded to this a few minutes ago about March is your time to go away, right? Are there other ways that you have figured out how to fill your cup, or is March just turn on?
Well, I do summer camps sometimes.
Okay.
And I just got back from the Cody Hodge thing up in Amarillo, which, by the way, is the best thing in the entire state that nobody knows about.
Okay.
Free clinic, basically. Schools pay nothing to go to it, and every clinician or every respondent that was there was a state judge.
Okay.
And so I do get to do some of that, but not a whole lot. It's my March, April, fill your cup and hope it stays filled till the next year.
So then you said Cody Hodge?
Cody Hodge is okay. So,
I'm getting my crack research team on this.
Yeah. Amarillo College.
Okay.
Okay. He was a student who passed away, and his father endowed a foundation because he loved theater so much, so that any school in the area or any school in the state of Texas can come to this festival and be critiqued by 3 state level judges.
Here it is. Yeah.
All you have to pay for is your transportation to get there.
Okay.
And they will take care of everything else. It's a wonderful thing.
Cody with
Everybody
a K. Okay. Yeah, it's Cody with a K, so that's why I didn't. Yeah. Because Cody with a C is like a football player.
No, Cody with a K.
Okay, I just found it. Yeah.
And his dad Dad, Ryan Hodge, is just the nicest guy, the nicest guy. And all he wants is for kids in theater, like his son, to get, as much as they can.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to throw this in the description to make sure people have a link when they hear this. So, well, good. So then, when you are working your 9 to 5, if you will, the Dolly Parton reference, when you're doing your thing as a contractor, what is it about that kind of fulfills? Because you mentioned very, very early in the conversation about how Florida's very their guidelines or restrictions or their codes, all that kind of stuff, are very tough, rightfully because of hurricanes and weather. Probably the same over on the far coast over in California because of earthquakes and such. So where this is very a selfish question because it's something that I've always kind of wanted to explore, but how much control do you have as a designer when it comes to what you're doing on your day-to-day basis inside somebody's house, or is it all collaboration? I mean, I know the answer is probably both, but
yeah, the answer is actually both. You'd be surprised how people don't know what they want.
Right.
They absolutely don't know what they want. Like I did this. I have this one client where I literally gutted their entire house. There was nothing. I even replaced the stairs. And I asked the wife, what sort of things do you like? Well, I don't know. And they look to me to tell them what are the trends, what's happening now, and what is the best practice? Like, what's the best thing to use on the floor? Should we use tile? Should we use vinyl? Should we use engineered wood? Should we use actual hardwood? And then I've got my spiel where I can say, well, the water table here is really high, so hardwood is not necessarily your best idea unless we put a really expensive water barrier between the slab. That sort of thing. So my expertise of having done it helps a lot. But I'm not a designer, except a theater. I can do theater designing, but I'm not an interior designer. I have no qualifications for that, but I know what I like. And so, I will guide them in what I think they should do. I would listen to them to see what they want and try. It is a collaboration more than anything. But I find myself more than just listening to them and doing what they want. I end up being their partner in it and helping them, assisting them, giving them, this. It'd be a better idea if we did this, or it'd be a better idea if we did that sort of thing. We really need to put some can lights here because there's not enough, and I can put this one in there because you can change the temperature of the light and that sort of thing. So,
okay,
collective. I think if you've ever been in tech theater person at all, it's just like doing a production. I mean, you start at the beginning with your design. You go to your production book, and you work your way through it. And then opening night is when you show them the final product. It's very satisfying. Oh my gosh, very satisfying.
And finally, just out of curiosity, what's the most difficult renovation or piece or room or whatever that you've ever done, and why?
Well, I guess I've done everything.
You know what? Let me ask you this, because I've watched a lot of.
Ask a cleaner question.
Yeah. That's not a good question. You're right. Yeah. Let me ask you this, because we watch a lot of HGTV.
Right.
This may not be the closing question. I might have a follow up. Is that stuff real?
No, not really, because they don't have the timelines right. They don't have the inspections. No one ever sees anything being inspected, and sometimes I have to stop for a day just waiting for them to come in and look at my sheetrock inspection or look at I can't close the floor. I've opened the floor because I've changed all the plumbing, but I have to wait for the plumbing inspector to come. So that's not true. Plus the money is not. They can't do it for the amounts they say they're doing it for.
Yeah.
I just finished a lady's bathroom, and it was, $57,000.
Right.
Now, granted, she picked the highest end of everything, but it was just a bathroom for $57,000.
Yeah. Okay.
I do jobs from. I built some cabinetry for a sweet little couple, $3,000.
Yeah.
And I also do jobs that are $200,000. I'm everything in between. So you name it. I swear to God, I'm a real contractor.
I believe you. I mean, I'm not going to have you work on my house because the codes are different, but,
Yeah, there are no. Do you know there's not a license in Texas? You don't have to be a license. You don't.
no contractor's license. Yeah.
No,
But you, I believe like each individual element
trade. Every trade has,
every trade. Yeah. So
but you
that's,
don't.
yeah, I could go out. Oh, trust me, I've met a few of those contractors. So
Mhm.
that have no license, even a probably driver's license. Um, okay, fine. Then I'll get you out of here on this. Let's try to be eloquent and clean with this question. Uh, there are a lot of people leaving the profession, rightfully or wrongfully, right? And it's been a problem. Not just the profession of theater teachers, but also just education in general. Um, but some of those people are leaving for greener pastures, and or they think they're greener pastures. Some of those people are leaving to be real estate agents or this and that. You have now left and come back a couple times, but why? What type of advice would you give somebody that is thinking about? They're not quite sure. They're on the fence about should I stay or should I go? Great song. And what is going to help me make these decisions and make me feel comfortable with those decisions?
Well, do you remember I told you that I did some undergraduate advising for Mrs. Denny
Yeah.
when I was in college? And the one thing that she used to always say that I hammered home with every one of them was if there is anything else that you can do, there's anything else that fills your cup, you need to do it. That you only go into this because it's the only thing you can do. I mean, I'm not saying you can't physically do other jobs because there are, but this is the thing that talks to your soul. This is the thing that makes you who you are. If you're not completely satisfied at the end of the day and you've left everything in that classroom or on that stage or whatever, then you probably need to find someplace else to go. And listen to me. I don't know how you guys are doing it now with all the stuff that's happening. I live in Florida, for God's sakes, and they're I'm not going to get political, but the things that they're happening in classrooms in Florida right now are just insane. Even the things that the publishers are making, it's just ridiculous that it's becoming so difficult just to do what is a very simple job.
Minor wisdom.